Hello and welcome to what will be the final video of 3 for the art of Chillbeats. So our first video focused on the history and the artist that kind of helped create the genre. The second video focused on the sounds that are most present in the music and things that are pretty common in lo-fi hip-hop. And this last video is going to be how pretty much anyone can make lo-fi hip-hop chill beats. Excuse me. This is going to be us actually doing a DIY version of a hip-hop lo-fi chill beat. Now, there is way too much to production to cover in one single video. This is a full disclaimer. There's a whole bunch of different digital audio workstations you can work through, also known as DAWs. My most common DAW is Logic, but for this tutorial I'm going to be using something that is entirely free to use. The website is called bandlab.com, and it's a free to use digital audio workstation, digital audio workspace, and it's browser based. So everything that I'm going to be doing and everything that I'm going to be making here, you are capable of doing without having to pay any upfront fees. I am also not going to go very deep into the mixing or mastering process. Really, the only things I'm going to be focusing on, or the few things that I want to get through, are sort of creating a beat, so creating the drum loop, or the thing that will kind of repeat itself, the elements that comprise the chill beat. So there are a few different things that can go into it. The options or the elements are actually pretty limitless, but I'm gonna go through a few of them that I would use, using a sample pack. So a sample pack being a set of sounds that I give to you, or that I set as like reference sounds that will be available through a reference sheet. A little basic equalization, very, very basic. That's a whole study unto itself. Transitions, which is a little bit more of the sample loops and what to do with those. And sorry, like I said, there's not going to be very much mixing and mastering going on. Honestly, I'm going to start realistically by dragging and dropping a few of these sounds from my created sample pack for this piece in particular. Now, when you go on to create your own music, you feel free and encouraged to kind of like search for different sounds and different there's a whole bunch of capabilities out there. A lot of the time, just a simple Google search for lo-fi sounds will get you the kind of sounds that you're looking for, or things that you want. I personally use a library that I subscribe to called Splice. So I find sounds through that. It's a subscription service for royalty-free sounds. A couple of the sounds that I found for today's video are from Splice, and a few of the sounds are just a simple Google search. So all these things are capable, and you don't necessarily need to pay any money for it. Well, if you are already familiar with production, a lot of this is going to be pretty basic, so you may not necessarily need this, or need any of the very basics, the very early things. But other than that, if you have any thoughts, or if you want to develop things differently, very much encouraged to develop your own sounds and your own methods of creating these lo-fi chill beats. But I'm just going to show you a couple of things that I would do. So I had already created a Bandlab account. So first things first is you are going to have to create an account to be able to use this, and then there is a button near the top after you've created the account that's basically to start a piece of music or start a piece of work. So the first thing I'm going to do is drag my piano sample, which is going to serve as sort of like the basis of what we're doing. So I'm going to drag it from, I have it in another folder, or I have it kind of saved in a folder, so I'm going to drag it from the folder and just move it in here. So now you can see the waveform and the sound, waveform being the actual physical or the visual representation of the sounds as it jumps and gets louder and gets quieter. So I'm going to first make sure that the piano loop begins right at 1, or at the very beginning of the piece. And this is probably what I'm going to start the music with to begin with. And I actually don't know very many shortcuts or anything like that for this particular software. So a lot of what I'm going to be doing is probably going to be very long form and like right-clicky, like copy and delete and slice and whatever else, because I'm going to need to, in order to create a loop, I'm going to need to copy this a couple of times. So first, let's just take a listen to what this sample sounds like. So notice that on the sample itself, it has piano loop 1. It tells you the key, A minor, which is just one of several keys that could exist for the music. But if you're creating loops, it is best that whatever you're creating loops in all kind of come in the same key, unless you understand theory at a level where you can mix and match loops from different keys. But as of right now, it's probably best if they're all in the same key. So if I find it and use any other loops for this particular video, I would be using them, and they would be in A minor. The next thing next to it is 85 BPM. 85 BPM meaning 85 beats per minute. It means that a beat being a measure of time for a piece of music. So every single time, or there are 85 unit measures of time within a minute for a beat. So the click, let's say it were 60 beats per minute, that would mean there is a beat every second. That's pretty slow. 85 is still relatively slow. One thing that I'm going to change right off the bat is in this new project, which I haven't named yet, it tells you at the top, or it gives you options at the top for key. So I'm going to switch right over to A minor, as is indicated by our piano loop. And right here, where it says 120 BPM, I want to switch it over to 85 BPM. So let me do that. Don't adjust. I don't want to adjust my audio because I just want this thing to change to being 85 as well. No, I do not want to adjust. So now my project file is at the same tempo and key as the loop that I started with. Let's take a listen. Good. So long as you can hear that, these up here are indicators of how many measures being a collection of beats. Most typically, this number right here, the 4/4, will tell you how many beats are in each measure. This is indicating, the 4 on top indicates that there are 4 beats in every measure. So at 85 beats per minute, there are 4 beats per measure. One cool thing to notice here, and makes it so that we can work a little bit more steadily. Usually in beat making or loops, we work in groups of 4 measures, 8 measures, or 16 measures. It just usually evens out pretty well for a form, as you can hopefully notice by where I put my marker here. We started the loop at 1, and it ends at the end of 8. So it's a pretty even amount of loop time that we have gone through here. Instead of playing it one more time, I'm going to now, just the same as everyone else, learn how to make another copy of this. So I'm just going to copy and paste it, see if that works, And it did. Isn't that wonderful? So now I have two versions of that same loop inside of this measure, or sorry, inside of this project, which means they will play back to back. I will start just at 8 and you'll hear it. So there's a little bit of a click that happened in between the two versions of this. So, or the two copies of this. I don't know if you can hear it. That little click can be undone by what's called a crossfade. Not entirely sure how to do that here, but for now, I'm just going to leave that click there and we will continue and move forward. But if this were a project that I was working on more seriously, or for like a client or for myself, I would make sure to crossfade, or like make sure that the volumes intersect so that that click in between those two samples does not happen. All right, so usually in the arrangement of one of these loops, I will begin with something like a piano sound, and after it's gone through once, as we can indicate by this marker here, I will start to add different elements to it. So just to make it a little bit lighter for now, I'm going to add, or to start adding the bounce really, I'm going to add my Lofi kick. So this is to emulate a kick drum. Just one sec. And I will drag it over. Now we have a kick drum. Now I have to learn how to zoom in and out real quick. So view, that one's not it. Zoom. There we are. We have buttons up here for us. So I'm zooming in and out because I want to be able to grab this and start it off instead. Like I said, there's not going to be a lot of shortcuts here. I'm going to do most things longhand. I'm going to drag it out. And there we have our first kick sample. Listen to what it sounds like by itself. On our track over here, there's a big M and a big S. Each of these tracks, when they're highlighted, has different attributes. But first, we're going to click S so I can just hear the kick sample on its own. S stands for solo, M stands for mute. They have opposite effect. Solo, you will only hear that one track, and mute, you will not hear that specific track. So right now I just want to hear that track, so I'm going to solo it. Did you hear that? I know it's pretty fast, but let me give it a little more time. Nice. So we got this nice pillowy kick drum. Now one kick drum does not a beat make. So we're going to develop the beat by copying this kick drum and adding it at different points inside of this grid. As you can see, there are little gray lines to indicate what part of the measure this kick drum would be playing in. So to start, I'm gonna copy it a few more times. Well, let's see if there's a shortcut I can learn really quick. Nope, that's not what I want. But that is. So that function up there that I just saw is a looping function. So what that'll do is it'll take whatever sample that you dragged in, and however long it is, in this instance it's got it's only like 2 lines in width, which makes it, according to this piece of music, would make it just part of a measure. So it makes it, I think, 1.2. It makes it just about half of a beat long. And if I copy it over, let's see, I copy it for an entire beat. Or sorry, not an entire beat, an entire measure. But as you can hear, it'll just continue to play that same kick drum at that same interval. So that's not actually what we want, because I want to be able to hear, or I want to create a sort of pattern out of this kick drum. So our first pattern idea, Let me do a copy. I want to start this off pretty slow, so the kick drum pattern that I'm going to start for this part of the sample is going to be a little bit different than the kick drum pattern that will go on for the rest of the sample. Or sorry, for the rest of the piece. So I'm just going to move things around. Cool. I want to actually copy all of this. Oops. Oh, nice to know that I can do that at least. Oh, and I figured out a shortcut already. Sometimes that's how it happens. So if you hold the Alt button while you're using the mouse to drag it over, or what I did was I highlighted all of the sound, or all of the things that I had just made, and I Alt dragged it over, and that made a duplicate of what I had, so I could duplicate it over and move it to the next measure. So whatever I had in measure 9 is now in measure 10 as well. Nice. Alright, so I'm going to keep that pattern going by, guessed it, Alt-clicking again. If you're on a Mac, I'm pretty sure it's Option instead of Alt. Right now I'm working off of a PC. Let's hear that all together. Cool. I want to start adding yet another element. So I'm going to continue to copy, or I'm going to once again duplicate this to fill up that entire space of the loop. So the entire 8 bars from 9 to 16 now have kick drums in that same pattern. Next, I'm going to add a little bit of, or I'm going to add a snare drum. So the snare drum oftentimes goes in a pattern kind of very, like most of the snare drum patterns are pretty similar, where they happen on the 2nd and the 4th beat of the measure, typically called a backbeat in most other musical contexts. So let me just add a snare drum sample like we had before, just added with the kick. Nice. I'm gonna expand it so I can see it. Whoa, why are there several? Is there more than one? No, it's just colored pink. Okay. So I'm going to move this over. You see it says 9.2 up there. I'm liking this DAW so far. It's very very straightforward. So I'm going to copy that over and give that, or just put it on 2 right now, so that I can maintain the sparseness of what we've had, or what we've created so far. So right now we just have the piano loop, which is our bass, our meat and potatoes, and well, meat and potatoes might be the lo-fi and the kick snare, or the lo-fi kick and the lo-fi snare that we're adding now. Really depends on what kind of person you are as a producer. But ooh, I do not want that, but that's nice to know. That's a function. So what I'm seeing right there, and just because I'm used to seeing different DAWs, that looks like a looping function. So looping is super helpful when you're trying to hear the same part over and over and make adjustments to that same part. So I'm just going to drag that orange bar up there over, and you're going to hear that it's just going to play this first measure. It's going to play over and over and over again until you tell it not to. Alright, and if you click on it again, it'll continue on instead of looping. But that is great to know and going to be super helpful for us. So, nice and simple as of right now. I'm just going to add those snare drums in now, or just in the second beat of each of these measures that's coming up. So, by the way I'm duplicating these is literally still Alt and dragging. This seems to be a pretty universal thing for DAWs, apparently, because I just did it now, and and it's something that I've understood for a while. So we're gonna go through that, and now we have snare drums on 2 for each of these, or for every measure. Now I'm going to do something interesting where I will take out the last snare drum. Actually, I'm going to take out all the drums by highlighting and deleting all the kick and snare for the last measure. Now, what is super common and super helpful in most production is to add some sort of transition between the different parts to gauge and add some interest between when the song is a little bit more sparse and when the song is about to pick up loop-wise. So I'm going to add what's called a riser. So a riser, if you listen to electronic music at all, it's very common in electronic music. It's something that you get just like big whoosh sound that hits right when the measure starts again. So I'm going to add our Lofi riser now, and this is added right before, so it should end right around when the next phase of this loop would start. See? So I'm going to adjust it a little bit because I want it to come out right as the next part of the loop starts. So another thing I'm going to do is, instead of copy pasting like I did the first time, I'm going to alt click this loop, and now we have yet again a third version of the piano loop, so that once we hear the riser, we can hear it start. Cool. So as a complement to the riser, we are going to add an impact. So I have 2 impacts in the sample pack. Let's try out both of them. So an impact being something that gives us a good firm stance on where the beat restarted, because we took away a lot of the elements of the beat and we want it to come back in a strong way. See, because that feels a little bit empty, and I want it to feel a little bit fuller if we can. Just making sure that you can hear everything. So if you can't, that's big sad for me. But let me just make sure sound is coming through. Yeah. Oh yeah, sound is coming through. It might be a little bit too loud. I'll make adjustments in a bit. This might be a little bit better, so it's not overcrowding the way my sound comes out, because I don't speak very loudly. I apologize about the beginning of this video then, if I'm a little bit too loud. So far so good on this loop. Nice. So I'm gonna add, I'm gonna actually try out 2 different impacts, see which one sounds nicest. So the impact will go right on the first beat of this next loop. You hear that? That's really nice and clean and easy. Now I'm going to try this massive one I found that I liked. Woo! Oh man. That was not the intention, but now you heard it at least. It's a much bigger impact. First thing I'm going to do is mute the impact that I had before, so I'm not hearing that one, I'm just hearing the new one. I want to test them out. I actually really like the big one. I think the big one sounds really nice. So I'm going to keep that one muted, but I will also keep the track around because I'm thinking that I'll want to use that impact again at another time. So now that we're transitioning from the more easygoing part of the loop into sort of the harder hitting part of the loop, we're still in Chillbeat land. So it's not quite harsh or not harsh. It's more so just where it actually feels like it's moving as opposed to just starting. Yeah, I really like that sound. But I'm gonna turn it down a little bit. So these, each track has their own volume marker. If you pull it down to the left, you'll see it goes into the negative, dB standing for decibels. If you pull it to the right, it will get louder. So you want it to get a little bit quieter. Or I wanted it to be quieter because it was blowing out my ears a little bit. So I'm going to get it quieter still, but I like the sound of it. Actually, I'm going to do the same with the riser because I'm not a big fan of such an in-your-face riser. Even less. Give me even less. Let's see what it sounds like when it's really tiny. Too tiny on both, but it's okay. We're just going to turn both of those down. A lot of the time I actually start my beats with everything turned down as low as it can be first and then turn them up to mix together. That's probably something I'm going to do after we add all the elements together. But for now, we just have the kick and the snare drum. There are more elements to this beat that we're going to add, and they're going to come into play right here. At this measure 17. So, first things first, I actually want to basically complicate the kick drum pattern. And so to do that, not necessarily complicate it, just fill it out. So, I'm going to use a very common kick pattern. It's like boom, ba-boom, boom, 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 ba-boom. So that's what I'm going to try and create in this, and then I'm just going to have it keep going like that. So I determine all the places where what I just spoke in as ba-booms by the lines that are indicating our measures here, or the different beats of the measure. So boom, ba-boom. It's going to be my first one. So that's beat 1. Boom, ba-boom, boom. And the would be the snare drum. So I'll add a little bit more to that in a bit, but boom, ba boom, which is that and that. Actually, I'm gonna make it so that it's a little less. So if you remember from from our video about Jay Dilla was very much against the idea, or not against, but he didn't quite play to the grid, which is what we're seeing here. So I oftentimes add these imperfections on my own by pushing the samples and the sounds away from the grid. So notice how it's not exactly lining up with the grid there. I'm going to pull it back here and see how it sounds now. I like that better. Boom, 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 boom. So I'm going to continue this out now. Boom, boom, boom. Nice. So the next part of that pattern is sort of a triplet. If you don't understand what that means, that's fine. You can just listen along. It just basically, it's not gonna line up with an exact 4-beat grid anyway, just because of the nature of how it's supposed to sound. It's kind of like in between these grid pieces. that's not where it is. That was just Control Z, or sorry, Control Z as an undo. One of the most useful things in the earth, on the earth, as far as creating stuff on the computer. Nice. So I'm just gonna move it back a little bit. And I want to copy that because it's pretty much exactly what I want here anyway. Yep, let's hear it all together. Keep thinking that I'm gonna get to scroll this way, but it doesn't work that way. Alright, nice. So I like that kick pattern. It's a little bit better, or it's not really very complicated, but it's going to drive a little bit better. And I'm literally going to copy it over a couple more times. No, stay. There we go. And then I can copy the whole thing over and just fill it up for the rest of this loop. And from pretty much this point on, we're just adding elements. The snare drum is going to be almost identical to what we had before, but this time I also want to add it on not just beats on the second beats of the measure, so where it says 0.2, but also on the fourth beat of the measure where it says 0.4. As you can see, it lines up at where it indicates for 0.2 and where it indicates for 0.4. These are telling me the beat of the measure. So if there are 4 beats in the measure, this is the fourth beat of measure 17, and this is the second beat of measure 17. Cool. I actually I think I'm missing a kick drum where I want it, so I'm going to add an extra kick drum here. Yeah, I actually want this. Oh, no, I want the whole thing. All of these. And I'm going to drag them over and make them anew. So, and if it's a little bit imperfect, that's actually fine, because that's part of the style of the music to begin with. Oops. So we're doing a little bit of what's called clipping, which means the overall sound of what's happening to the whole piece, the whole project. There's too much sound or too much volume going through, and it's making the whole project distort at the top. There are ways of fixing that. I'm probably going to try and figure out a better way to fix that once the whole beat is written out. And we will play around a little bit with arrangement as well, because the arrangement's kind of important, but for now we're still building this out. Now that we have our basic kick and snare, I want to add a hi-hat. And the hi-hat, let me make sure I'm down in this project where it says drag and drop loop. I'm going to add hi-hat. And I want to move this track up closer to where the snare and the kick are, because I like it visually to be as close to each other as possible. So the hi-hat pattern is mostly going to be basically every one of these gray lines, but not quite, because I want to make it sound a little bit broken. So if it were just perfect, it would sound like this. Oh, also too many. Actually, don't want every gray, I want every other gray. There we go. Good. So if this were perfectly on the grid, it would sound like this. And I want it to swing a little bit. The way we add swing artificially is like I have been doing, which is one way. There's also oftentimes a quantizable swing. Nope, it's not going to be in there, but sometimes you can just find it pretty easily, a quantizable swing. But as in like you can literally like force it to be exactly swung a certain way. But instead, what I'm going to do is I'm just kind of going to manually move these around to make them sound a little bit off place. Let's see how that sounds right now. Nope, not quite what I wanted. But trial and error is our best friend. So, leave that out. I kind of want it a little bit closer. Yeah. So for now, what I'm going to do, let me get the cursor out of the way. For now, what I'm going to do is put like a couple of them on the grid and take a couple of them out of the grid. Just barely. So you see how it's just not perfect? I want that one further out actually. Nice. So I'm going to duplicate that. And perhaps to add a little bit more variation, I'm going to move one or two of them just slightly. I don't want to move the first one because I like where that sits, or I like having at least a little bit of it sit right. That just dragged straight to my cursor, which is fine. Cool. And go. We zoom into the cursor, please. All right, nice. All right, let's hear how that kick drum sounds now. Or sorry, how that hi-hat sounds now. Nice. All right, so we have a decent hi-hat pattern that I'm literally just going to copy and paste from one play measure to the next. And if any of these sounds so far are abrasive to you, don't worry, we are going to work on something for that. All right, cool. I'm just going to keep it going. Nope. From 20, and then I'll copy all of it over. There's still a part of it that is grid-like. It's like, it's kind of perfect imperfection. So it's definitely a style of creating fake imperfection that a lot of people have ironically perfected. So I'm going to put one right there again. Then let's just take away this little chunky end here because I only want... There we go. Let's listen now. All right, already feeling this. All right, well, let's add back in the kick drum and snare towards the end because now we could just fill out this entire beat. Rather than adding space for what would have been the impact, which is what we did a little bit earlier. As you can see, we added that space for the impact. Let me hear just the end of the beat to make sure I did it right. Nice. All right. So just to kind of add a little bit more flair to this, or a little bit more flavor to what I'm hearing, what I want to do is I want to copy the pattern that I have with the hi-hat and add a ride cymbal doing basically the same exact thing. So same exact pattern even. Normally there would be an easier way to do this with like an automated sound, but for now I'm just going to figure out how to do this here because we are working in Bandlab. Alright, let's hear what that sounds like. Nice. You know what? I kind of liked how it sounded just in the mix itself like that. So instead of doing what I said I was going to do, I'm just going to try copying it over and seeing what it sounds like when I just add it the way it exists already. Wow, that fit almost too perfectly. That scares me a little bit. I'm going to copy this over and just have it exist as the almost perfect thing that it is. And now, watch. Oh, I'm going to turn its volume down a little bit too. Well, realistically, I want to turn both their volume, both that and the hi-hat down. I'm going to turn everything down after a while and turn it right back up, but I'm just kind of creating a basic mix right now. Nice. That actually sounds really good. So we have our hi-hat, our ride cymbal, our snare. I'm going to add yet another part to this beat, which I really like. And it's also relatively common. I'm going to add a shaker. Now, the shaker is not going to be as present as all these other elements of the beats. As you can see, there's a lot of waveforms here. The shaker, I'm just going to add in little pieces of, or it's going to be closer to what the snare looks like. So, coming through with a shaker, Lofi shaker. Whoop, yeah, that's what it sounds like, but I'm not used to using browser. Move to here. There we go. Now I'm going to put it back up here. Okay, so now we have the shaker, and I want it to do a kind of like sound. So this sound will add a certain flair in the middle of something. So let me figure out exactly where that's supposed to sit. So not quite there. I actually want it towards the end of a phrase. So phrases to me being after one or two measures instead of, let's hear. That's where I want the ch. So let's figure out exactly where that fits in this. Nope. So it's gonna come here and here. Ish. I'm actually gonna off-grid it. I'm not gonna let it be on the grid because maybe it'll sound better. Yeah, it sounds so much better like that. So, also turning the volume way down because I don't like how bright that is. But it's nice. It adds it fills out the beat quite nicely. So I'm not gonna add too many more elements, or I'm not gonna add very much more at all to the beat itself. I'm relatively simple with the way I make them. just because I like what's on top to kind of fill more space. That's just the type of musician and artist I am. It's not quite like the best practice, but I know what I like and I know what sounds good to me, so I kind of roll with that. But notice how it's just there. It's actually not going to belong there. It's going to belong at the end of 20. Let's hear this now. Cool. Drag it a little bit over. Nice. So I want 2 more of those. Exactly the spots that they had them before. So let's drag them over. That's going to be at the end of 22 once again. Oh, where am I? Let's get the cursor over there so when I zoom in, it's better and closer to what I'm actually looking at. I'll keep it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Maybe a little bit further to the left. Just a slight pushback. Alright, good. Alright, I'm going to do what's called trim the end of that particular phrase because it goes over the 24 mark, and I want to loop, and it'll be a lot cleaner if it loops straight forward. So I'm gonna cut it like that, and now it ends at that 25 mark like everything else does. Notice there's nothing that goes beyond that, and that makes it easy for me when I want to copy now the entire beat. I can do a big drag like that, make sure that all the elements I want are copied, and just like I had been doing before, Alt, click, get it to hit right there at the 25 mark. Let's just double check that it's there and it's not any further than that or any or layered over. It seems like it's just slightly over it. There we go. Snapping to my grid. Perfect. Okay. Let's hear it from one to the next. And then I'm going to add it's another piano sample to sort of like act as just another piece of this. I might even chop a little bit of the current piano sample we have just to add in the next piano sample and really just have it happen at the next iteration of this loop, which would be over here. So I'm not going to make this loop too long either. Nice. I'm gonna drag this. This is the thing when you start doing this, you start to hear all the little imperfections you've made yourself. I don't like how that one sat. Felt like that was a little too late. That might be too early now. Nope, much better. But the second time it happens, it should also be pushed back a little bit anyway. Just a little bit. Let's hear. Nice. Okay. To transition between these two, I'm gonna use the first or the small impact instead of the big impact because we're just going in between little parts. So I'm gonna add that Lofi impact 2 that we had muted before, and I'm gonna put it right there at 25. And you'll hear how it makes just that tiny little difference in the switch from, or it makes it not feel like it's just a bunch of the same. See? Just that little ding adds a nice amount of sound. Good. Nice. All right. So I'm going to make the arrangement a little bit more interesting. First off, I don't need this track. It was just there as a first. So as of now, we have how many tracks? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But 2 impact tracks. So really, this is relatively simple as of now. There's not a lot of things going on. I have a second piano loop, also an A minor, also at 85 beats per minute, like I said before. So I'm going to add this in. And it's a lot shorter than the other one. So let's hear what it sounds like when I just add it on top. See if it makes it sound really cloudy. Nice. I actually mostly just want that ending, so just listening to it now, I'm going to chop it up to just here. Let's hear what it sounds like by itself. I'm going to solo it. Nice. And it feels like a chopped sample to begin with. Let me pull it up closer to where the piano is. Nice. It's starting to lag on me already, which means I'm adding a bunch of stuff. Like I said, I'm not going to work too much on the mix. But what I will do is just add, because there is an effects panel here, so I will do something that's very natural to lo-fi, and I'm going to do it over every one of these tracks, and that's to cut out all the high frequencies above a certain threshold, because high fidelity also usually means having more of the higher frequencies present, and in lo-fi, we don't need them. In fact, they kind of like muddy things up and make things sound a little bit too harsh on our ears, which is why lo-fi is super good for like background music, because it doesn't have a lot of the harsh things that kind of catch our attention. Like that high tss would be taken away. You probably even heard it pretty well, just me doing tss on my microphone. It's just part of the sound. All right, so let's hear what it sounds like when it's just in here. Nice. I like it. I like it there. So it feels like I chopped it in there, even though it's not chopped in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually turn the volume down for just that moment. So what I did here is I could recognize a symbol when it looks like it. So this felt like show hide automation. Automation means the things that the program will do automatically for you. A lot of the time it's associated with the volume. So it's turning the volume of a specific sample or track down or up at certain times within the track. So for this, I'm going to add buttons here where I turn, you can go, I add a node here and a node here. And oftentimes you actually want to add 4, because if you're going to pull this down, like I'm going to do, actually no. Did something cool for me. So I just wanted to pull down right around when that sound comes in, so that sound comes out more. So let's hear it. See? Almost imperceptible, but it makes that next loop come through like really nice and loud. So as of right now, this is mostly a really nice beat. Sorry, got hair stuck in my mouth. I like how this is sounding. What I want to do next is make it so that I can keep this going for another like 2 times, but not have it be so boring. Because if it's just the same over and over and over and over and over and over again, it's gonna get boring at some point. So what I want to do is I do want to copy over what I have. So all of these elements, including the risers, this time, or maybe not. I might have to add the risers in a second, but it's actually pretty hard to drag and add all of the elements in at once, but I will do it. I am determined. Nice. Alt drag / option drag if you're on a Mac. Yes, but also I'm gonna undo that because I dragged it to the wrong place. This is the part of creating beats that takes forever, and it's just dealing with your own human error. So I'm seeing it. I'm seeing the loop drag, and I want it to, click right in place. But right now the lag made it really hard. Do I want to move automation? And that's a big yes, because I want it to still duck out when I do that, or when I add this little element of it. So now we have all these things. I'm going to start taking certain things away at specific points. So now at this middle point, I want to reintroduce our big impact. And I'm going to add back the riser as a sort of transition point, but I'm going to take out something that kind of takes up a lot of sonic space. I'm going to take it out for just like a measure. So I'm shift clicking all of these. Shift click will allow me to click multiple things at once, and I'm going to delete them. Let me just get the cursor out of the way. Going to delete that one too. So let's hear what it sounds like now. A riser would be really great to transition back into that, or back into having all of that sound back, because we had lost some sound, and losing the sound is good. It's a good thing. Having some space definitely helps the arrangement. I'm always a big fan of taking things away rather than just adding once I have the core of what I want. Alright, so this riser should end a little bit earlier. There we go. There we go, but not too early. Push it forward a little bit. Nice. And I'm going to add back in that other impact, just because whenever I have a riser and it goes nowhere, it feels wrong. So the riser, to me, is always or often accompanied with an impact. Impact could be on its own, but the riser, to me, should have an impact as well. Maybe I'll take away the initial snares here and here. Let's hear how that sounds. Come on. There we go. There we go. Alright, cool. So that section of the song has a little bit more movement in it again. And instead, here, what I'll do is I'll take, for this last round, I'm going to take everything that I just played with, all of the beat elements actually, Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll take this riser and this impact, the massive one, and play it again, or just take the massive impact, play it again at now this 41 point. I'm going to basically take everything away and see what that sounds like. I can always undo it. But I'm going to take, where is that impact? 41. So I'm going to let this kind of like ride on its own as a sort of finale to the beat, where we've kind of taken a lot and added a lot, and now we shall be taking away. We addeth, we taketh away. So now I'm going to kill these parts. I'm going to let it just hit on the first beat of 41. So this doesn't need to be there. This doesn't need to be there, but that first kick drum does. These don't need to be there either. I will keep that because I like the sound of that. And then there'll be this impact. And I'm going to let the piano samples kind of be their own here. Or really just like add back in the piano sample as a way to fill out the space again. Nice. Because while it'll be a little bit muddy, it's a difference enough to not make our ear feel like it's crazy. Ooh. Before I listen through it, that actually did sound like I wanted it to sound. I'm going to push back at this and cut this in half. Good, so I don't have that second impact. Nice. So now I want, when this thing's moving, again to duck this track out. So I'm gonna add basically the same, kind of the same automation that I had here, but a little bit earlier. Something like that. Nice. I'm gonna add it in one more time here, but I'm gonna cut it out a little bit early so that it feels like an ending. There we go. Let's see what that sounds like together. Nice. All right. So what I'm going to do here is just kind of let that fade, or I'll add just the first part of it back in here. Yeah, you can move the automation data, but it doesn't really actually matter that much because I'm cutting it off after a while here. I'm going to go back to my automation. Oh, I guess I don't want all that. Ah, nice. It all sticks back together. So I want it to fade out. I fade out like this. Nice. Okay. So nothing is perfect about this beat at all, but we have a beat. Going from beginning to end, we started off with just the sample pack, and now we have a good overall sound. So I'm going to fix a couple of these automation things that I don't like, which is just making sure that the volumes play out better. The clips are not going to be doing me any good. Nice. Alright. I probably, like, while I would end something like this is more for tutorial purposes than anything. So, I'm going to go back to where our little loop thingy is over here. And I'm going to make it loop the entire passage that we just made. So it's not very long. But then again, none of these loops actually have to be very long. There's no reason for it to be. Or if there's no reason for it to be long. If you just like what you made. And again, of course, I made this in like an hour. There are much better ways to start and stop something like this, but let's just take a quick listen to what has been made. Before I make a quick listen, I don't like the way it clicks at the beginning. Volume automation is my best friend. I'm going to come back to where it starts here and just, I don't know why it does that, but pull it back first. Alright, not start it from the very bottom, but start it from someplace where you don't hear just an instant click. Nice. I still hear it, but that's just part of the sample. There's definitely gotta be a tutorial on how to crossfade in this program somewhere, so. Alright, nice. So that is our loop as of right now. That's the beat. So it's rather simple, and you can do a lot more with a beat like this if you want to. The only thing I'm going to start off with right now is I'm going to sort of, as a final thing, just a basic equalization, basic EQ. But first, let me take the volume of a couple of these things down. And I see you volume automated. Oh, nice. It does work that way. So I've been pressing A as a shortcut for automation because that's what I'm used to with my DAW Logic. I don't want that, but I do want to pull this all down a little bit. I see that you're automated. And then it pulls up as well, so it gets a little bit louder actually as the track goes on to kind of add energy. This is already being moved a little bit, and I mostly like where this is sitting. So to add a little bit more / take away a little bit more, I'm going to go into effects. I'm going to go into effects for the piano loop. Let's see what we got, because I've never actually used this. Recommended EQ3. This is exactly what I want. So this equalizer has low, mid, and high. What this effectively does is at certain middle frequencies, high frequencies, and low frequencies, it will pull some of the sound away. I'll play this in the loop and see if you can hear it while it's soloed. Just doesn't need all of that up there, so I'm going to squash the high. I'm going to pull back even a little bit of the middle. That's less necessary, but still. I'm going to do the same thing here for, take it away from the automation box, do the same thing here for EQ on this little piece of it. Oh, it's soloed. So yeah, it needs a lot less of everything actually. So I'm pulling all of it out. It's also just a little bit loud, so I'm gonna make it less loud there. Nice. And I'm going to pull the high end all the way down because I don't want it at all. Nice. So we're going to pull the high end out of basically everything. And I pulled some of the low end out of these ones too. When I say low and high end, I am talking about the frequency range. So I'm going down into this effects panel, add effects, recommended EQ, and I'm going to just pull way out because the kick drum definitely doesn't need it. And it gives it that nice boxy sound of a kick drum. The snare drum's not as bad. I'm probably going to pull out more than just the high end. Gonna pull in the middle of. These just different kind of like tricks of the trade. This is really up to taste. The high end, I will want to take away so many things or the hi-hat. See, the hi-hat sounds entirely different without a high end. So I want it to be really kind of like out of the way here. The shaker as well. The shaker out. Ugh, too loud, shaker. Shaker's still just too loud as a whole, so I'm gonna pull it down even more. Nice. Now it's a little bit too quiet. I don't want that. I'm gonna pull this one up again. There we go. All right. Riser also doesn't need the high end. Literally, you can see I'm doing the exact same thing or very similar things to almost everything here. The impact should be really the only thing with high end, but it doesn't necessarily need it that much either. So I'm just going to pull it back a little bit. I'm going to pull in some of the low end. Same thing here. I'm actually going to, it's very boomy. And let's hear it all together. Nice. You hear how it kind of sounds a little bit underwater now? It's meant to sound a little bit underwater now. I think the only thing I didn't add anything to was the ride cymbal. The ride cymbal also needs the high end pulled out, but I need to hear what that sounds like too. Not too much. Definitely doesn't need any low end at all. Nice. And then we only keep all the washiness. Okay. So you saw me do just that very basic mix. There's not much more to this. The rest is just adding things to taste, and messing around with things and adding in more detail. So let's see. Let me figure out how to publish and kind of save this. Download mix down. So I went file, download. I think I went file. Yep, file, download mix down as. Give it a title. Oh, it's saving everything for me. Very, very nice. Honestly, for having used this the first time, this feels great. For a free program, this is a lot better than what I would expect. So I guess I could recommend. I guess as of now, this is an ad for Bandlab, but like I said, this is entirely free to use. All the samples that I have used here will be available for you, although I do encourage you to find different sounds and different things that you like and just play around with whatever you can make as sounds. So this final project will be available within that sample project, so you can hear it and kind of reference it if you need to. And I hope you learned something today. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening.